Good morning and welcome to this wonderful occasion. I'm Dr. Anne-Marie Kreutzarek, and you'll see me a little later in the program, but it is my honor and privilege to welcome you to this beautiful commencement ceremony. I do want to just mention one thing. We won't be using the chat as an exchange of information, but we did post the program today in the chat if you want to follow along. So we will begin with a beautiful procession of our young men. And I want to just thank everyone who was here doing the individual diploma conferments. We had a beautiful sacred moment with our families. And today we're able to share that sacred moment with you in a collective celebration. Welcome.
Good morning, Dr. Kritsarik, Board of Trustees, Mr. Spate, Mr. Farrell, faculty, family, friends, and fellow graduates. My name is Maximilian Delaney. I'm the student body president at Stuart Hall High School, and I'm pleased to welcome you all today to today's unique ceremony, a moment to celebrate the class of 2020 while also being attentive to issues our world faces today. I would first like to acknowledge and express the utmost gratitude for the administration, faculty, and staff for everything you've given us over our time here, and for all the hard work and care that went into providing each student with a memorable and intimate diploma conferral over the last few weeks. I honestly don't know of any other high school that has displayed more creativity, thoughtfulness, and time for the class of 2020. And for that, we are thankful. I'd also like to take a moment to thank all the parents for your constant support and dedication to us students. We are grateful for all that you do for us. I know this is a difficult time, as many of us envision sitting in the gym together with our classmates. In the meantime, however, we must focus on the present moment. And today we have this opportunity, an opportunity to reimagine the commencement experience. You will see that some parts of today will follow the standard flow of our school's commencement ceremony, while other aspects are new additions. Regardless, it is our hope that the words and images presented to you today will capture the essence of Stuart Hall in the class of 2020. I'd now like to introduce President of Convent and Stuart Hall Schools of the Sacred Heart, San Francisco, Dr. Anne-Marie Kritsarik. Dr. Kritsarik has influenced the school in many ways since her arrival here. She's a visionary leader who strives innovatively and outside the box. So please welcome Dr. Kritsarik.
Maxie, you're doing a great job already. Thank you so very much. It is my honor today to introduce our invocation speaker. But before I do, I hope you felt the incredible power of seeing these young men walk down that path. And for me, it just brings to mind that what we're celebrating today is each of them have been on their own path that has gotten them here today. And we are so excited for the path they will continue on. We've all been guided on our paths as Sacred Heart educators by the religious of the Sacred Heart, past and present. So we call them to mind today as a deep and abiding blessing. They have created this tradition and this legacy of Schools of the Sacred Heart San Francisco since 1887. It is an honor today, kind of an unbelievable honor for me, to have a mentor and a guide of mine present the invocation. This is no ordinary woman. She is known by several names: Mother Mardell, Mary Mardell, RSCJ, a name you might be very familiar with since we've named our chapel on Broadway in her honor, and affectionately by her family and her friends as B. Today, the invocation will be presented to you, class of 2020, indeed a historic moment, by a woman who helped move the schools in 1940 to 222 Broadway, and who now, just this past March, celebrated her 102nd year. B, thank you.
I feel very honored to be some small part in your celebration. And it means a great deal to me, especially because this is a very historic commencement, that's certain. And I'm thinking today of all the religious of the Sacred Heart who, here in San Francisco, since 1887, have year after year been present at the students' graduation. We are all part of that history. And I'm very aware that even though there have not been religious and Sacred Heart in your high school years here, I want to assure you that we have been very present with you, both in our prayer and in our love and our interest. And I wonder if you know that where I live at Oakwood with about 50 other sisters, we pray every morning, day after day. We pray aloud for you, our students. And so I'd like to pray today. I'd like to pray that the love that you have received here during your school years will increase in you in every way, and that you will spread that love, communicate that love to everyone that you meet. There is nothing our world needs more than that love. And I'd like to close with just a little prayer that is one of my favorite. It's from St. Paul's letter to the Philippians. And he wrote, "May your love grow richer and richer in the fullness of its knowledge and the depths of its perception, so that you may learn to prize what is of value." And I bless you. I ask God to bless you in every way. Congratulations.
All right. Good morning, everyone. And again, thank you for all taking time and making space for this unique ceremony. Under normal circumstances, this speech would be filled with memories, jokes, and laughs. However, we have the rest of our lives to relive our favorite moments at the hall. Knowing how close our class is, I'm confident we'll come together again to share those memories, if not today. For now, we must turn our attention to the pressing issues that define our current reality. It would be a disservice to everyone to treat this as an ordinary valedictory address. To be completely honest with you all, after George Floyd was mercilessly killed, it was difficult for me to prepare an address for today. I think I speak for a lot of us that I couldn't think about, much less speak about, anything else. There are times where it is best to follow the leadership of those groups that have been oppressed. And there are times when it is best for some of us to step back and listen. So in no way am I attempting to overshadow the mantle of leadership right now. There are many leaders in our community currently speaking up, who I admire and respect for their guidance in this last week, and we must continue to listen to their voices and actions. With that being said, please think of this more as a reflection than an address, a reflection from someone who doesn't have all the answers, but is just trying to make sense of how we as Stuart Hall graduates fit into the puzzle. Many of the students know, but for those who don't, a common theme for our class this year has been the desire to stay true to our roots. Our school's roots come in many forms, from rituals such as acknowledgements and espacito, to stories such as the life of the former student James Kessler and the Morning Star building, to the imagery of cherry blossoms and nights. These roots come together to create a notion of Stuart Hall High School that we affectionately call home. Another part of our school's roots is its history of pushing boundaries. Foundress Madeline Sophie Barra broke gender barriers to educate girls when she founded the Society of the Sacred Heart. And 200 years later, gender barriers were broken again in the Stuart Hall, the only boys' high school in the Society of the Sacred Heart. As the events of the past week, and the past 3 months for that matter, continue to play out, it is safe to say that we are living through times that will certainly go down in the history books. What the future holds, none of us truly know. The future is unpredictable. The future is beyond comprehension. In many ways, part of Stuart Hall's roots is that we represent a future that no one would have imagined 220 years ago when the first Sacred Heart School was founded. Who would have imagined Stuart Hall, this band of characters, misfits, and unique personalities? Who would have imagined this school in the corner of Pine and Octavia, this Catholic school with its Japanese American heritage? PhD professors who teach high school boys, sports teams that make it to state championships with men who challenge stereotypes of masculinity. Who would have imagined this place that blurs the line between being a school and being a family? Stuart Hall defies and challenges the very idea of what a school even is. So it is part of our institution's roots to push boundaries, to do the unthinkable. Now, I consider our current reality, a world dealing with the pain, panic, and shock of a pandemic, a country with systems that continue to unjustly discriminate, oppress, and kill its very own people solely on the basis of skin color. So when I think about the question of how we, as Stuart Hall graduates, can stay true to our roots, I offer this. As our school's history is to break the status quo and to do the unthinkable, let us honor our school's roots by pushing boundaries ourselves, by taking action, making change, and working towards a future that today may still seem beyond our comprehension. Class of 2020, I miss you all, and I know we will do great things. Thank you. And with that, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Sean Mendiola. I think I speak on behalf of everyone that it was not a surprise to see Sean elected as class speaker for the class of 2020. Sean is a cheerful, lighthearted, and energetic soul. Many recognize him as the best to ever DJ a school dance and for his great work as spirit representative on the student council. However, don't let his bubbly personality fool you. Sean is also a bold and courageous leader. While I've witnessed his inspiring authority when he was my cross-country captain, Sean also leads with his kindness, as he is often the glue that keeps our class together. Sean is a gifted runner, DJ, scholar, leader, and he is someone I'm lucky to call my friend. Without further ado, the class speaker, Sean Mendiola.
Good morning, and thank you everyone for being here, including all of our staff, faculty, family members, and closest friends who have all undoubtedly put in a whole effort to provide us with a comprehensive educational experience and inspire us to be stewards of the outside world. My name is Sean Mendiola, and I am honored to speak on behalf of my fellow graduates. To our class of 2020, though we are not physically together right now, I would like to hope that our good memories together as brothers will keep us connected. Throughout our 4 years at the Hall, we have all encountered something out of the ordinary, something that pushes us to step out of our comfort zones. My first instance of this was well beyond the first day of freshman year. I actually had no intent of enrolling at Stuart Hall. I barely looked at the brochures. I never went to any of their open houses. I didn't even shadow. The only time I stepped into the building was actually for an interview with Mr. Khan, who was our old admissions counselor. However, I still had no intent of going. But when I got my letter, something in me clicked. I did not know what force drove me to become part of this great community, but I knew that I would be walking into something very beautiful. Every one of our guys here is a unique individual, and being able to experience those traits every day made it so easy to get along and share some high quality memories together. A lot has happened since freshman year, but some of those standout moments have to be our physics classes with Dr. Weirs and Miss Mitchell. We will always remember Dr. Weirs' intrepid and unabashed teaching style, and of course the ingrained memories of kinetic energy and head-on collisions. Although I was not in the other class, I remember checking my phone and seeing half of the whole school lined outside of Saboni due to a clumsy and wet accident. Unfortunately, I cannot expand because, in the words of Mr. Roos, our old Latin teacher, you must not talk badly of people who are not in the room. That was also the year of Mr. Downs's compelling police stories, and of course, his famous air horn effect that always drew us back in. Not to mention Frosh Soft basketball, the dungeon was filled with chants for our buddy Rion Koizumi after his clutch corner three. That same year, we met some brand new faces, such as Mark the bus driver, our good buddy Walt, and of course, Neo Kula, just call him a Lenny. It was our second year at Stuart Hall when we really started to get a hold of ourselves. Or maybe it was just our egos that really started to connect us. Mr. Buckley's history classes, for example, the moment it became 8 o'clock, you can only pray to be in one of those seats, because otherwise you would have to get a tardy slip. And oddly enough, the last open seats were always in front of his desk. Starting off, those red days were brutal, but nevertheless, our essay writing and time management skills skyrocketed. Along those same lines, Dr. Hawkyard's honors chemistry classes deserve its moment, such as his 4-question vocabulary quizzes. I remember looking around and seeing similar faces just to see if anyone else actually did the Anki flashcards, or when Miss Hall's C-period English class utilized the couches in room 103 to its fullest potential, while the others were definitely not playing cards behind the table. That same year was our trip down to Costa Rica, and we were definitely in unfamiliar territory. No phones, no family, no parents, we just had each other. Although we had some scares, that 7-day trip opened us to new friends, a love-hate relationship with Pico de Gallo, and of course, a salsa competition victory. Speaking of opening ourselves to the bigger world, our theory of knowledge class made us question our understanding of capital T truth. Of course, the omniscient Dr. Campos practically diagrammed our false perceptions of reality with one stroke of the pen. His dramatic vocalization of how important it is to think was tattooed into my soul with the categorical imperative. That class was particularly special for 2 things. It gave us a purpose as human beings, but more importantly, it gave us a deeper perspective of what it is like to be an outsider. Senior year, our final year, was unique, particularly for Stuart Hall High School as a whole. Many were concerned with losing touch with our heritage, and we voiced our concerns about the next batch of kids who may not ever have the same Stuart Hall experience as we had for the last 4 years. Frankly, I was worried. It felt like I was lost without our tradition, as well as the understanding of what it really means to be a knight at the Hall. Although it was bittersweet, it was our class and it was our guys, it was our leaders who set the tone and led us to stay true to our roots. Something as simple as a sticker or a drawing of a mascot truly makes the difference. Least to say, this year has unfolded into a wild turn of events. Although our final year has come to a halt, it is important to appreciate and reflect the events that lead up to today. Dealing with change, death, oppression, are some of the few challenges that we face. However, that scary feeling of not knowing what unfolds tomorrow is up to us. We are tomorrow's leaders, and it's our actions that decide what we will see in the future. Your voice matters, even when you feel like it doesn't. You may have not just found the right purpose yet. Exposing yourself to uncomfortable situations will always end victoriously. The fact that you put yourself out there is an accomplishment in itself. We are superheroes and we are leaders. Just remember the 3 rules that I recall from Grandparents' Day. Just remember to roll with the punches, relax your face, and learn from those experiences when the time calls for it. And to all my classmates, teachers, administrators, counselors, faculty, staff, and importantly, our fellow graduates, you have all made an impact in our lives. You have all taken care of us, and we are now ready to be sent out. And for that, I am forever grateful. Thank you all, and be safe.
Thank you, Sean. The second you meet Dr. Campos, you instantly feel, as he would put it, a sense of gravitas. With his sage-like, esoteric, and prudent demeanor, it is not uncommon for freshmen to fully believe that their new Intro to World Religions teacher is literally enlightened. Dr. Campos is a gifted educator who somehow manages to teach the complex philosophical theories of scholars like Michel Foucault and Hannah Arendt to groups of restless teenage boys. Perhaps Dr. Campos's best attribute as a mentor, though, is his role as a facilitator and listener. He's an expert in creating space for difficult but necessary dialogues, and he often encourages his students to lead these conversations. Today, however, it is our turn, as the class of 2020, to encourage Dr. Campos to share his words with us. I'd now like to welcome the elected faculty speaker, Dr. Michael Campos.
Thank you, Maxie. There are few moments in a lifetime that compel us to stop, look up, and discern a world beyond. 3 months ago, as spring rolled in, the global community folded into itself before an emerging pandemic. The vulnerability of our bodies, both susceptible to and carriers of disease, demanded a clear ethical response. Wash your hands, stay home, keep distance, and breathe. And then, just as we began to awaken from this interminable slumber, we staggered at the end of May into a world imploding. As protests spilled into the streets to name George Floyd, yet another Black man who suffocated beneath the weight of state violence. He could not breathe. 2 moments, one that threatened the integrity of our bodies, another that broke through the illusion of our body politic. Forced to stand in between, I found words inadequate. Even simple platitudes felt like a violation. The virus that wreaked havoc on the predictability of our lives drew me to the story of Passover, that moment when God, who in an act of liberation, did so in the form of plagues. We know how the story ended, an enslaved Hebrew people set free. But what if we stood on the opposite side of that story? What if we were the Egyptians, not the Pharaoh, but one of the teeming masses, a negligible worker, inhabiting a body marked for death? What would it be like to encounter God, not as liberator, but as contagion? What would it be like to experience God as one who upends all that we thought were normal? In light of Lloyd's death, we grapple with a contagion that ravages more than our bodies. It is one that pierces through the heart of America, our illusory aspiration to white privilege that blinds and asphyxiates. Driven to protect what little we have, might we miss the opportunity to encounter an other, not as extensions of ourselves, but as one who calls us outside and beyond ourselves. Without this other who calls, might we suffocate in the stale familiarity of our little world. Class of 2020, consider this. Yours was the class that called me out when lessons needed to be stopped so that we can listen to the world's heartbeat. Remember well our conversations during the Kavanaugh hearings. But yours too was the class that struggled to take account of your privilege, sometimes a little too loose with your words. Yours was the class that drew from heroic loss to inspire victory, recall our push towards state championships. But yours too was the class that sometimes mistook grit, hubris, and aggression as markers of masculinity. I cannot even imagine the sense of loss you must have felt during these last few months. But do not lose sight of the fact that when classes, retreats, leave takings, and even this commencement was relegated to the virtual, you were also taking account of the world's collective pain. And so, my brothers, sit with your sadness, sit with your Zoom fatigue, but orient its potency outward to the public square among those who struggle to breathe their stories into existence. Be grateful for the luminous halls of the flood mansion, but do not forget the memory of internment embedded in the ancient sweep of the Morning Star building. There are silent stories within which still draw heart. Take care and support your roots, but remember that nostalgia can stifle. Rose Philippine, who left her familial word, knew this well. Only critical memory can move us to action. And consider how your body and its easy way with space and language, and then listen to the uneasy cadence of many who walk our streets anxious of being misread, spoken for, and violated. We live in a time of contagion, but that which kills thrives not so much outside as that which eats away inside, within uninterrogated and unexamined lives. Aspire to greatness, men of the hall, but do so by taking pause and facing the other as a critical friend, a necessary ally. Together, we breathe more freely, we conspire, conspirators in birthing the world anew. My deepest love to each of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Campos. At this moment, I would like to welcome our head of school, Mr. Tony Farrell. Not only is Mr. Farrell our head of school, but he's also an English scholar and teacher. Yes, this can result in some of his ideas being a little abstract, but I assure you, his words carry weight in our community. While there are many inside jokes at our school about Mr. Farrell's speeches, we never lose sight of his most valuable pieces of wisdom and advice. Mr. Farrell is often the reassuring voice, reminding us that we all have natural gifts, and our time at Stuart Hall is an opportunity to find them. He urges us to embrace our classmates for all of our differences and push back on the societal concept of masculinity. And most importantly, it is abundantly clear that he cares for and loves this school with all his heart. Now please welcome Mr. Farrell.
Thank you very much, Maxie. I have a great deal of respect for what you and Sean are trying to do with us today. Not trying to do, succeeding with us today. Thank you very much for being here. At this time, I get to introduce awards that were conferred in these individual diploma conferral ceremonies. The first award, the James Rowcliffe Kessler Award, is in honor and loving memory of James Rowcliffe Kessler, 2009, who, as it would happened was the very first individual diploma that we conferred. Ms. Simpson, Mr. Sharafinsky, and I, with his mother, conferred his diploma to him just days before he passed away. I'm grateful that our conferrals since were much more joyful, as much as they were more private than we might have wished. James found his voice at Stuart Hall High School, and yet he was also a tremendous artist before he even came to our school. He wrote a poem in 4th grade. Be the wind chime, let the wind flow through you, turn storm into song. And we have all been charged to turn this current storm into some sort of song. Stuart Hall High School recognizes a graduate who found, developed, and shared his voice in the visual, performing, or written arts. Rainier Dela Cruz found a way to touch our hearts, even over Zoom, with his portrayal of Gomez in this spring's Addams Family musical. And at this time, we are going to try the very exciting thing of my continuing to speak while you all are able to witness the moments of these awards. Also recognized as our Dupin Award winner, recognizing the student who most models the goals and criteria of a sacred art education as recognized by the faculty and by his fellow classmates. Faculty and administration of Stuart Hall High School honor a graduate who has modeled the goal of striving personal growth in the service of the school. William Ryan displayed one of the steepest trajectories of growth I can recall, encountering his challenges and our challenges with a warm and perhaps mischievous smile all the way. Maxie Cellini, elected as our valedictorian. One can often go with a valedictorian simply on the basis of grade point average. And if that were the case, Maxie would already be the valedictorian. However, he also earned this role through his leadership, through his engagement with his community members. We've been very proud to award our valedictorian medal to Maxie. And finally, Hank Veld with our service award. Hank showed tremendous leadership in communication and just in the behind the scenes work, whether it was for our school community, or for the community outside the gates of the hall. It is a practice at our school that we engage in something called acknowledgements when we gather in a manner such as this. Students and faculty stand up and acknowledge a fellow classmate or colleague for a kind or generous act. At this week's Prize Day, our seniors will be happy to know that we got a bit carried away with our 9th through 11th graders, and acknowledgements lasted for 40 minutes. 40 minutes via chat. I have an acknowledgement. Great, Noah. Please share your acknowledgement. 40 minutes of students calling out faculty, calling out each other. This morning we will, I assure you, perform a shorter version of this practice. If you can please, might be difficult to stand when you're recognized, but we'd appreciate you to take a moment when you're recognized. And first, I wish to acknowledge so many of you whom I first met when I was reading admissions files and essays about grandparents and the special impact they made in their grandsons' lives. Grandparents, we acknowledge you this morning. We acknowledge your role, and we extend our regrets that we could not meet you in person today. My predecessor, Gordon Sharafinsky, when asked, how is the school so successful with boys, responded, oh, it's simple. At 3 o'clock, we make them go home. Parents and guardians, for the last 11 weeks, your sons were home the whole time. We were in this together. For that, we are so grateful. Parents and guardians, we acknowledge you. There were a number of faculty and staff from the high school and from our facilities team, communications office, advancement, and alumni offices that were vital in the execution of our diploma conferral plan in a way that worked with our current health order. 6 days in the middle of their work schedules to pull this off. To all of them, we acknowledge you. And of course, we also recognize our teachers and staff who continued to work to find ways to do teaching from a distance. It is a special, special group that somehow not only kept to the curriculum, but also continued to hold relationship with our students, even while staring into a green little dot on a screen. We acknowledge the Pauls, Mr. Paul Chow and Mr. Paul Pryor-Lorentz, for co-captaining the technical aspects of this event. Just a few more. One, for my colleague, Rachel Simpson, head of Convent High School and our chief academic officer. To be flying into new territory on one zone can be daunting, but to be with another is actually quite comforting, especially when one's partner brings humor along with strategic acuity. So for Ms. Simpson. Another is for Dr. Krejcarek. The night of Friday the 13th in March, she led a meeting that went well into the night, setting a course for the leadership team that her expectation for learning was that it would continue in the most compelling way possible through the pandemic. No excuses. Her energy and determination and drive fueled our efforts. If she was the kind of person who needed acknowledgements, she probably wouldn't do the type of job she has. But this morning, Dr. Krejcarek, we acknowledge you for your leadership and pushing and pulling all of us through to the end of the year. And finally, we acknowledge our RSCJ everywhere, and particularly those the retired religious at Oakwood who are watching with us this morning. Your prayers have buoyed me and have buoyed us. Thank you for creating a tradition of transformation that we are so privileged to be able to continue. As for my own remarks, the Reverend Dr. Liz Theoharis wrote a reflection that I was reading in one of those daily meditations one gets in one's email inbox. She noted that Jesus, when speaking of the kingdom of God, used on-earth examples, IRL examples. No clouds, no skyscapes, no waterfalls, no unicorns, no mystical supplies of Skittles and Twix bars. Instead, the kingdom was a real, material economic order with the integration of the marginalized and the persecuted, and citizens making the most of time and opportunity to do good for others. The kingdom of God is a world with justice, without poverty, want, or oppression. Now, certainly the parables could have been meant only in a symbolic way, but what if they weren't? What if, indeed, the kingdom of heaven is meant to be on earth with us right now? And once we start talking about kingdoms, it only follows that a talk about kingdoms includes knights. Almost every one of the young men in this class has a real thing about knights. Yes, it is the school mascot, but our guys became very particular about the way it is presented. Knights. The source of most of our sense of the medieval knight is Sir Thomas Malory's 15th century novel, The Death of Arthur. Malory's work was considered a primer that detailed what men should do when they have power. Namely, that their power was to be used to take care of those perceived to be weak. Additional ideals like courage, integrity, and courtesy round out the concept we think of as chivalry. On the evening before their knighting ceremony, squires would kneel before an altar in prayer and in commitment to the Lord of the land. Sure, there were jousts and feats of strength too, and maybe all the tales in that novel, like in the gospel, are meant only as extended metaphors and symbols. Maybe all our thoughts about knights are just about a logo. Maybe, though, maybe the stories themselves, like Jesus's parables, actually apply to real life, that the reader should engage in a real life commitment to use power to stand up for the powerless, to extend sincere courtesy to others, to live with integrity. Now, spoiler alert, most of the knights in Malory's novel don't make it. It is a hard road full of sacrifice. He wasn't saying it is easy. The last several days have taught us that what we kneel on or what we kneel to can make all the difference. Will we kneel on others, hoarding power along the way? Or will we kneel as a commitment to ideals that are much bigger than us? And are we ready to put in the work? In chapel a few years ago, I referenced an image displayed in the reception area of the Golden State Warriors practice facility that showed nearly identical photos of Kevin Durant making almost exactly the same shot to win finals games in consecutive years. Stunning feats of athleticism, literally with the game on the line. Inside the practice area, and after the Warriors team practice, I saw, along with a handful of our students, Kevin Durant practice shot after shot after shot. Weird one-legged shot from one side, 11, 12 times. Weird one-legged shot from the other side, 11, 12 times. All sorts of types of shots, shot after shot, over and over. And then we saw him about 30 feet away from the basket, practice that very game-winning shot he made in those finals games, shot after shot. He was preparing for his moment. I learned he didn't take either of those game-winning shots out of desperation. He made them because he had confidence in the way he had worked prior to those moments. How are we preparing for our big shot? How are you preparing for yours? What will it be? And will you make it when it matters? Now that you have walked out the gates of the hall, you might leave our logo in your rearview mirror. But how you live, what you fight for, the way you kneel, and how you work says everything about the future in front of you and the future in front of us. Our world has plenty of boorishness and selfishness caught up in the thick of thin things. Our nation is rife with tragedy at our borders and in our cities. We need real life knights, not just two-dimensional logos. Knights committed to high ideals, committed to the work it is going to take to make the shot when it matters. As our namesake, Janet Erskine Stuart, shared, it is a vain expectation to hope that self-control and unselfishness will come forth at command in a crisis. when they have not been practiced in the small occurrences of daily life. The rare crises of life reveal us to ourselves, but we are made in the small victories or defeats of every day. It is my hope, a hope that comes with a dose of courage and confidence, that the young men who have received their diplomas are ready to craft a kingdom on earth that brings the peace and healing we desperately need. And so I am pleased to call out the names of these young men who received their diplomas from Dr. Krejcarek and Mr. Spate. George, Charles, Marcel, Albert. Cole Alessandro Bianchi. Max F. Bucchioni. Ham P. Ryan C. Darwin. Zion Tyler DeBerry. Rainier Esteron de la Cruz. Diego Antonio de la O. Andrew Carl Dolan. Samuel Wynn Dragone. William Scott Garlington. Nicholas Getty. William John Gorman III, also known as Tripp. Galen Hastings. Maximilian Hoffman. Matthew Keegan Howard. Kyle Haas Jasper. Samuel Eric Jubb. Aiden Kastner. Rian Koizumi. Antonio Tsakopoulos Kounalakis. Nicholas Michael Kuwata. William Rice Larson. Nicholas Joshua Lutz. Cameron George Makras. Francis Ulysses Luhati McCorgray. Kyle Walker McMahon. Sean Joseph Enriquez Mendiola. Michael Robert Metz. Owen Colin Murray. Alexander Nunez. Dennis James O'Donnell IV. Emmanuel A. Olivares. Jack Joseph Perrone. Casper Pratt. Colin Edward Ritchie. J. Henry Ryan. William Fisher Stuart Ryan. Henry Maine Sears. Cole Chow Raynham Slater. Lansing Paul Tam. Maximilian Keen Tellini. Dylan Dwyer Tomeo. Kio Torres. Din Tran. Benjamin Leahy Uliet. Adrian Martin Vasquez. Henry Louis Veld. Joseph D. Weinstein. Aries Isaiah Williams. Marcus H. Williamson. Tomas Novoa Wolber. Antonio Paul Wu. Christian Xavier Young. Maxwell Zwerner. Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to have presented you the Stuart Hall High School class of 2020. Yeah, let's do that.
Thank you, Mr. Farrell. And now, with one last closing reflection, I'm going to reintroduce Sister Mary Mardell, RSCJ.
I have always felt so close to the schools of the Sacred Heart in San Francisco because I spent most of my life there. In 1940, I made my first vows as a religious of the Sacred Heart, and I came from the noviceship in Albany out to San Francisco to 2222 Broadway, which in 1940 was opening. The school was moving from Jackson Street to Broadway. And I was there helping move furniture in on the very first day. And I had the wonderful opportunity to be there for all those years. I had the joy of seeing us begin Stuart Hall for boys, and then later dreaming of being able to have a high school for Stuart Hall. All those events and all those really precious moments are part of my best memories. And what is happening now at schools of the Sacred Heart, both at the convent and Stuart Hall, is really very thrilling, very gratifying to me because I see how God has blessed them. There was, I see also how the same spirit is present in the school, thanks to the wonderful administration and the faculty that you have.
Before we close with a beautiful recession, just want to thank B. Mardell and the Religious of the Sacred Heart for giving us this dream, this vision, and for always being pioneers and knights doing powerful things in the world. Our gratitude is heartfelt. We feel the love deeply of Sacred Heart. Thank you. Let's celebrate.